River Landing Conversations. I'm Jim Kalaki. I'm here with Kay Heflin, and I suppose on this particular day, I should take advantage and wish you all a very happy St. Patrick's Day. Um, at this hour in Dublin, the parade is over, and people are probably doing what they do at every Friday night at 8 o'clock in Dublin, and with a little extra reason to celebrate today. We have great reason to celebrate today because our guest is Wiz Horner. And for those of you, all two of you in River Landing who may not know Mr. Horner, you will know that he is a major contributor to this community. My favorite story about Wiz is that when I came here, I had the great and good fortune shortly to get on the scholarship committee, and Wiz has elegantly led that committee for years and had overseen the most wonderful scholarship uh, presentations for staff every summer. And Wiz, again, thank you for that.
Thank
It's the highlight of my life at River Landing to be a part of that. And now to get to sit next to you in this real live interview, a conversation. Okay. Anyhow, welcome to River Landing Conversations. It's great that you're here.
Thank you.
And if you had a nickname, or even if Wiz is a nickname, where did that come from and where did you get it? Did you like it? Would you like to be called something else? I won't say, have you been called something else, but
Don't you think Wiz is my regular name, a given name?
well, in America,
You never know.
you never know.
Well, no, my given name is Withers Grant Horner. So that's a mouthful. And all the little kids that I used to play with, they couldn't spit that out. So it sort of became a with, and Wiz is what it ended up as. So I tried to change it a couple of times when I went away to school, but it kept coming back. So I've decided to keep it.
That's who you are.
That's right. That's who I am. So my mother was the only one that ever called me Withers Grant. And she would do that, embarrass me quite in front of my friends, It's Grant, Withers Grant. I preferred Wiz, so it stuck.
Great. Um,
Where were you when you were growing up with the name of Wiz?
Roanoke, Virginia.
Oh.
Just up the road, about 100 miles or so. And was born there, lived there until I went away to high school. I went away to a military high school. But we lived in Roanoke. I was only child. My dad had been married before and had two half brothers, one of which I was able to connect with later on in life. But Roanoke was a nice town to grow up in. Very nice place to grow up in.
What types of things did you do during your childhood?
Well,
Sorry, we'll put this out. Have your mic a little bit higher because you're not as loud.
You're missing.
Is your clip missing?
No, he's just missing.
I just can't see what I'm doing. Pretty
I
bad.
didn't want to go through the whole video when you're not
Yeah.
as loud. Let's see. Give me a test.
Okay, can you hear that? Is that any
Yes,
better?
that's better. Okay, I'm sorry, guys.
Where should we start over, Ariel?
At your question.
Okay. Mhm. And where were you growing up with the name of Wiz?
I was growing up in Roanoke, Virginia. It's about 100 miles up the road from here. A great town to grow up in. And had a great great childhood up there. It was terrific.
Good. What kind of activities did you do as a child?
Well, there wasn't that much organized back in those days, which was in the 40s. So there was a lot of sort of ad hoc play, and that's kind of what I really remember about was play, where you would, in a situation where you'd get up in the morning, particularly during the summertime, you go out, get together with your friends, decide what you were going to do that day, whether you were going to play baseball or football or, go play in the woods, make forts, that type of thing. And so I remembered that quite a bit. I remembered in school learning to play the cornet. That came up in about the
Okay.
sixth grade, I think, and enjoyed being in the band. So that was a lot of fun. I remember going to Sunday school, um, going to church with my mom. We were Presbyterian. My dad was Methodist. So we sort of split on Sundays. Those are the things that I remember. And also visiting grandparents. And we had something that we enjoyed doing on Sundays when the weather was good. There was enough relatives around where we would go up on Bent Mountain, which was just outside of Roanoke, and have picnics on Smart View Park up there, which is part of the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Oh, nice.
And it was kind of neat because I usually could take a friend of mine along with me. And we would ride up with my uncle. We always enjoyed riding with my uncle. And the guys up there, my dad, uncle, some of the other relatives, always had a mason jar with some strange liquid in it up there. And it was always fun as a kid riding down the mountain like this with those guys. And somehow we managed to live through that. So that was kind of neat. So that's a childhood memory that I'll never forget.
Nice.
What did you do after high school? By
Well,
way
high
of-
school, as I mentioned, I went away to high school, went to a military high school. One thing that I did do, and probably about the seventh or eighth grade, there was a magazine. I can't remember whether it was Boys. The name of it was Boys Life, and I think it may have been a Boy Scout newspaper magazine, I think. And on the back of it, it always had these advertisements for military schools. So I talked to my parents about that, and they decided, hey, if that's something you would like to do, we'll do that. So I went away to a military high school for 4 years, and that was great. I learned an awful lot there in discipline and how to work with different types of people, with different types of kids, actually. And I think that's kind of helped me throughout my life.
Did you play music there?
Yes, well, I was in the band for the first couple of years. I'd always been pretty good at band, and I figured, okay, hey, I'll go there and I'll be sitting first chair in the trumpet section. That won't be a problem. Well, when I got there, I found out that I was probably the worst there. They really had some outstanding trumpet players. There were juniors and seniors in high school there. So yeah, I did play in the band there. I was in the chorus and worked my way up in the ranks there, and was the executive officer for the battalion. So I had a lot of so-called management experience just as a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid.
Cool.
And that was good.
Right. Yeah.
Enjoyed
Yeah.
that. Enjoyed that.
And then after college, after
High school. Well, my dad had gone to Davidson College, had to drop out of there because he signed up for World War I. When he came back, he went to Carolina. So needless to say, when it was time to look for colleges, Davidson, Carolina, I wanted to look at Duke, and I think I also looked at University of Virginia. Well, the bottom line was I ended up going to Duke and was there for 2 years. And then my dad had to retire. He was much older than my mom, and the retirement age moved from 65 or from 70 to 65. He had to retire. So all of a sudden there wasn't that much money around, even though I was working too. So after 2 years at Duke, went to Roanoke College, lived at home. I had met Liz at that point. So we were dating and got married in my last year at college, Roanoke College.
Neat.
Yeah.
And your studies while you were in college?
Psychology.
Okay.
My intent was to go on and get a master's and a doctorate degree in psychology, become a clinical psychologist. And after graduating from Roanoke College, we had moved to Richmond, was going to be going to the University of Richmond
Right.
for my master's degree. And got down there in the courses that we had signed up for. And we had our first child by that point, first son at that point. Didn't appeal to me, so I decided I'll take a year or two off and work for a while. Friend of mine there in Richmond worked for United Airlines, and I talked to him about that. Back in those days, in the 60s, the airline business was sort of glamorous. Not so much these days, but it was then. So I joined United Airlines and worked there up in Washington, D.C. So we moved up to the Washington, D.C. area. And I worked for United for 8 years, worked my way up to personnel representative there. The next move was going to be to Newark, New Jersey. I didn't want to go to Newark, New Jersey, so that's when I left United and got into the government work.
And there's many ranges of government work. So,
Yes. Went with the Postal Service. Liz was a legal secretary and was with a very high-powered legal firm in Washington, D.C. And her boss had been the Civil Service Commissioner under Kennedy. And she let him know that I was looking around at something else. Next thing I know, I'm on a plane going up to Philadelphia to interview for a position in the Postal Service. And Postal Service at that time was building what they call the bulk mail centers to sort of compete with FedEx and some of those places. So ended up working for them for about 3 years and then moved over to the Department of Agriculture.
okay. Very wide variety
Yes.
of experiences.
Very much so. Very much so. Yes. Yeah. Enjoy the work at the Department of Agriculture, and as you know, Jim, where we sort of merged somewhere along the line.
Yes.
There. I work for the Agricultural Research Service, and folks, that's where your tax money is really being well spent because a number of scientists. We had a agency of about 8,000. And roughly 2,000, 2,500 of those were scientists doing things to improve agriculture within the country and throughout the world, quite frankly. So I managed to work my way up in that organization and ended up in the SES, which was sort of that level of government bureaucracy between the people who are political appointees and everybody else, the senior executive service. So that was good and gave me a great wealth of experience there.
Wonderful.
As a graduate of a land-grant university, when I got to River Landing and Wiz and I bumped into each other, we had an instant rapport because of this thing, because you're absolutely on about USDA and its amazing contributions to science and food safety and food security and stuff like that. And Wiz also knew what cooperative extension was.
Right.
One of the few people here probably, because I used to work for cooperative extension
Right.
at another part of my life. But so we had another nice connection between us. The other thing was, maybe you'll refresh us, if you will, because for those of us that have been here for a couple of years, one of the amazing FURL presentations about 2 or 3 years ago now was on the National Arboretum, which Wiz was the assistant director of as part of your USDA adventure, and gave a presentation here. If you didn't see it, ask Wiz to do it again, or maybe FURL could do it again because it was absolutely brilliant. But tell us about the Arboretum part of your.
Yeah, that was sort of interesting. When I was with USDA, I was in human resources primarily, and the National Arboretum had a great director down there at the time, Dr. Mark Cathy, who was excellent as far as being able to sell the Arboretum. He was on the Today Show several times a year doing some of his normal stuff. He is the guy who had the idea of sending flowers by telegram back in those days, you know, with the old telething. And but he unfortunately wasn't the best manager in the world when it came to resources. And so they were looking for somebody to go down there. I happened to get that job. And I knew absolutely nothing about horticulture, couldn't tell grass from a pansy. I just didn't know. So, but I was able to be there for a couple of years, and that sort of helped me, gave me a boost, I think, in my career too, as far as being able to take that experience of working in that small organization. And then the next job I had was out at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in Maryland, and that's a huge operation out there. We went from 446 acres at the Arboretum to 7,000 acres just outside of Washington. It originally had been 20,000 acres, but we carved off a few thousand acres for the Goddard Space Flight Center, which was on our property, the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center, as well as the Secret Service had an operation out there too. Plus some other kind of dark operation stuff that was going on that I didn't know anything about and didn't want to know about. So that gave me a great opportunity for management experience too. That was really excellent.
Did you retire was from USDA?
Yes, I did. Right.
And when was that?
2002, so 21 years ago,
Yeah.
22 years ago. Where did that go?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, well, having fun now.
Yeah.
That's good.
How
what
did life change when you retired?
Well, we traveled a fair amount. Liz and I traveled a fair amount. We had 3 sons. To bring you up to date, let's see, 3 sons now, 2 of which are married, 5 grandchildren, and 8 great grandchildren.
Wow.
And they're scattered everywhere from California, Canada, Alaska. Ones that just moved to Richmond. So we spent a fair amount of time traveling around, you know, visiting our
Family.
kids and grandkids. So that was great. And Liz designed our house, our retirement house, and we moved down to a place called Woodlake, which I think you are familiar
Yes,
with, right
yes.
down from where you were,
Right.
Carolina Trace. And we lived on the 3rd hole of one of the 2 golf courses there, and a beautiful lake is right behind that. We had a boat for a couple of years. I didn't find that much fun with boat. Preferred the golf. That was much more fun.
Yeah.
But found that that could be kind of boring if you don't have some other thing after you've had a busy career. And golf you can only do that
During daylight hours,
yeah,
for sure.
daylight hours for sure. Yeah, exactly. So I got involved in a couple of things there. One that I really felt good about was an organization called Prancing Horse. And Prancing Horse was an organization started by a couple, and they had about a half a dozen horses, and it was set up, very gentle horses, set up for primarily children who had disabilities. And it's amazing what riding on a horse does for a child who has disabilities, whether it's mental or physical. That movement on the horse just does something. And served on the board of that organization for about 3 or 4 years. Got involved in the Literacy Council there in Southern Pines and did some tutoring. We had a lot of migrant workers in that part of North Carolina.
Right.
And which were mostly men, but their wives were there with the kids, for the most part, did not speak English. So we had a pretty active program of working with primarily the wives and the children and teaching them English. So that was a good thing, good thing to be doing.
Sure.
Was in the chorus there, a barbershop chorus. Got the old cornet back out of the case and played with the New Horizon band there for a few years. got involved in the Lions Club. One thing that one of the other residents here, John Scroggins, and I
Yes.
did was to run the evacuation committee for 3 U.S. Opens, which were held in Pinehurst, and that was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Really neat. Got to see the professional golfers up close.
Right.
3 times.
Right.
That was fun. That was fun. Did you ever come down to any of the
I
Opens down there?
didn't. I prefer not to stand out in the heat in July and August
Yes.
here in
Very
North
smart.
Carolina. But yeah, Neil worked the tournaments when they had the men's followed by the women's. I
Yes,
believe it was
exactly,
that year.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. John and I were down there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was neat. That was fun.
So living on the third hole of a golf course, did you have a fairly regular supply of golf balls?
We even had some
Okay.
at the house on occasion.
Uh,
Yeah. My wife said we should have moved back a little bit, or that
Yeah.
lot over there would have been a little bit better. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the view wouldn't have been as nice there. Yeah, that was never a problem.
so at some point then you moved to River Landing.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, we had decided that when we got to the point where we weren't going to be able to perhaps take care of ourselves as well as we would like to, that we needed to be looking at something like a CCRC. We looked at several in the Pinehurst, Southern Pines area, had some money down on a couple of them. For a couple of reasons, they just didn't quite seem right. So Liz got on the internet, checked out this place. We drove in here. As soon as we drove in here, we said, wow, this is
Mhm.
nice. Golf course was a big help
Right.
too, right?
Sure.
So that's kind of how we ended up here after being down at Woodlake for 12 years.
And what special experiences or surprises or both have you had here?
A lot of experiences, some surprises, although I don't know why I was surprised, but the wealth of knowledge that the people who live here have in their backgrounds and their skills and abilities, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
When we moved here within the first year, we brought a number of folks that we lived around down in Woodlake up here to take a look. The Scroggins were one couple that we brought up. They moved here about 4 years ago.
Yep.
R.G. Spory moved up here within the last 5 or 6 months or so, I believe, something like that. So we just felt at home here more so than we expected. Open armed organization. Before we made the final decision, I wanted to talk with the people who ran the place, which was Tom Smith and Arnie at the time.
Mhm.
And we met with them and figured, gosh, if these are the guys that are running this place, we felt pretty comfortable with
Good hands.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found out here, just like I did after I retired, I needed to get involved in some stuff. I only do golf for so long, right, Peg? So there needed to be some things, that other things needed to be done. So I expressed some interest in resident council about a year after I'd been here and didn't make it the first year. I was expressed some interest in it. And one of the gentlemen who was on there had a stroke not too long into his first year there, and he was unable to continue on, so they asked me to come on.
Mhm.
So I had a half a year, and then I had another 2 years on top of that. So I got a pretty good feel for the Residents Council, how that worked, and was the chair of the last year, and was involved, as you mentioned, the scholarship program. That's probably one of the best things I think I've ever done in my life was the scholarship program, and I'm really very pleased with how well that's taken off. So I was able to be with that for 6 years, and this is my last year. Actually, last year was my last full year. I think they're going to have me come in and do one meeting and I'm out there.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
it. 6 years was enough, I
Yeah.
guess. Get
I
out of
think,
here.
yeah, and I think we should tell everybody out there, if you haven't attended the scholarship presentation, you should come. It is really a rewarding experience.
Yes, Yeah, thanks for that, Kay. I agree. That's really great. And it's not just the staff that are here, but they usually bring their families here,
Right.
which is really neat. Some of them with little kids, some of them with their parents. It's a really good, feel good day. Feel good
Absolutely.
day, and it's very helpful for the students too. Excellent,
Yes.
excellent.
Well, one of your other activities here has to do with our illustrious band.
Yes.
You want to talk about falling in with that and the instrument that you play?
Yeah. Well, for some reason they didn't need a cornet or a trumpet. You had to have a handmade instruments. So I started in the back row, sitting back there behind this curtain, as a matter of fact, almost playing the bass drum. And since I could read music and had some ability there, Rachel Dunn, who was conducting the band at that time, she had a vacancy up on the front row, and I told her, since it was all ladies up on the front, I thought it needed to be integrated,
Uh-huh.
and she let me go up there and try to play the bells. So I played the bells, and I really enjoy that. That's a lot of fun.
It's a fun
And,
group.
thanks to Bill Mowat for stepping up and handling that on an interim basis now, because that's kind of keeping us going since Rachel retired from that.
Yes, nice that it will continue.
Yeah, exactly. And I enjoy being in the chorus too. Chorus is Tom Burleson does a good job with the chorus. Good job.
Was one of our stock questions that you may know about is if the details were taken care of and some magic happened, um, who are a few people in time that you would like to have a visit with and why?
I would like to have some more time with my father. He was about 15 or 16 years older than my mom. So he died when I was about 26 or 27. Of course, I've been away for 4 years for high school. I was away for college. So we didn't have that much time together.
Mhm.
And he's a very interesting man and someone that I didn't realize until after he was gone how much he had meant to me and how much of him I was able to, sort of glom onto, luckily, and be able to use in my life and in my career. So definitely him. Um, Also, a grandfather that I never met from Scotland. You may be familiar with that part of the world. There's another country up there too, I think,
Yes,
somewhere up there.
in
Proximity,
a little close by.
really
Yes.
close by. He was from Scotland, and he and my grandmother came over in steerage, I would imagine, about 1910, uh, with six or seven of their 9 children.
Mhm.
Um, my mother was the only one that was born in the States. So I think something was going on in steerage because she was born not too long after they got here. I would like to spend some time with him, talking with him about his life in Scotland.
Mhm.
He was from Fort William up in the northern part of Scotland. Met my grandmother from Glasgow, and I would just like to spend some time
Mhm.
with him. And the third person, and there's still an opportunity, perhaps, since he's still alive, and that's Elon Musk. I would like to spend some time with him. He's such an interesting man, um, obviously brilliant, obviously rich, about $175 billion worth of rich, and has been involved in so many things, such an entrepreneurial type of guy, SpaceX and Tesla and all of those things. And one thing that he's particularly interested in now is artificial intelligence, AI, and what that will be like in the future for the world. And that there needs to be some guidelines and so forth with that. So he's the type of guy who's thinking ahead as to what the world could be in the future and trying to make some guardrails, maybe, or something.
Mhm.
So I think it would be great to talk with him.
Well, as you're a member of the Furl work group now, if you get connected with him, perhaps you could invite him to come, and I think we could accommodate a Furl course.
You think you could afford him?
Well, he could pay us to have the privilege of giving a Furl course.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he would jump at the opportunity. I'm sure he would jump at the opportunity.
We talked a little bit about music a while ago.
Mhm.
Do you have any particular genres or times of music that you really like that would find on your radio or playing on your CDs?
When I was growing up as a kid, my dad had a lot of classical music. And see the old RCA
Yeah,
Victor
78s, yeah.
recorder. Yeah, the 78s, that's right. A lot of classical music. So I sort of grew up with that. By getting into the band, enjoyed some band stuff. The Sousa music was great. The Rod Winter thing that he did on Furl was outstanding.
Yes.
And then in my teens and trying to play a little bit of guitar and ukulele and so forth, I like folk music. And a couple of my favorites are Gordon Lightfoot. I enjoy his stuff. And John Denver, I like his stuff. And then with the three boys coming along, I kind of got inducted into the rock stuff. So, and there's some of that I kind of like.
Sure.
So it's sort of eclectic.
Mhm.
I like a lot of different kinds of music. Yeah.
Good.
Wiz, as we sort of wind this conversation down, are there things that you had thought about prior to our starting today that we haven't talked about, or are there particular points that you'd like to make that haven't come up or haven't been asked?
Well, a couple of things I would mention. I think the Furl program that you were really the generator of has really been great for this organization. And I like the way that management here at River Landing encourages that type of thing sort of up from the roots of the residents. So I would just give some kudos to you and to Kay for doing this type of thing, because I think that helps all of us learn not only a little bit about each other who are here, but also sort of broaden our horizons, and quite frankly helps the whole organization do a better job. So that's about
Thank
all, I guess.
Well, thank you.
Great. The check's in the mail.
Good. Did I get down everything you asked me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As long as I got it all down right, that's good.
You need $10, don't you, Jim? Cost $10 and a bet not long ago. We won't
Oh.
mention it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We won't
We
mention
shouldn't talk about gambling. Maybe that's one of our. There are teams in Texas that sometimes do better than teams in Kansas.
Yes, they do.
Well, Wiz, this has just been a treat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this series.
Thank you both. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Again, happy St. Patrick's Day, what's left of it, to each and all of you. If you're really Catholic, you'll know that in 2 days we have St. Joseph's Day. And for those of us that grew up going to school in Catholic land, if you went to St. Joseph's School, you also got a day off in addition to St. Patrick's Day. So we were always very envious of kids that went to St.
St.
Joseph's.
He always gets in a plug, doesn't he?
He does. But you notice the German girl wore green today.
Yes,
Way to go.
The Irish
Indeed.
man did not.
yes. Well, Wiz has a blue shirt on, and I just got that memo. So anyhow, Ariel, thank you for your management and putting up with this stuff. And we bid you good afternoon. And as they'd say in Irish, Slán agus Beannacht.